Have you ever found yourself just standing there, maybe, first day at a new job or waiting in line somewhere, maybe even just before a party really gets going, and you want to say something in English, you feel like you should maybe connect with someone, but then, poof, your mind just goes blank.
Totally. That silence just starts to stretch.
Right, and it gets awkward. You're thinking, okay, what do I actually say right now?
Yeah.
That silence can feel like this huge barrier.
It's a really, really common feeling, I think, especially for anyone who's navigating conversations in a language that's not their mother tongue. That hesitation, it often just stems from not knowing, like, where do I even start?
Yeah, what's okay to talk about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What topics are, light enough, appropriate for just starting out, or even just how do I keep a simple little exchange going so it doesn't just die after one sentence?
Absolutely. And it can be super frustrating, can it? It feels like you're missing chances, maybe to build a connection, or even just feel a bit more comfortable in those everyday places where English is the main language.
You feel a bit on the outside, maybe?
Exactly. But that feeling, we're going to tackle it head on today.
Yeah.
Because we've got some really interesting material that came our way. It's essentially like a guide focused specifically on this thing called small talk in English.
Yeah, this deep dive is really about unpacking what this material offers.
Yeah.
And it gets right into the nuts and bolts of it all, defining what small talk actually is.
Right.
Explaining why it's often, well, quite a bit more than just idle chit-chat in some cultures, and giving us some really clear, practical ways to handle those first steps in a conversation.
So our mission here in this deep dive is to take everything this material has laid out and make it really actionable for you. We're going to explore the definition, like you said, understand its role, which sounds pretty significant in many English-speaking cultures. We'll get specific about the topics that usually work well.
And, crucially, the ones to maybe steer clear of.
Yes, definitely the ones to avoid. And also look at how understanding the sort of cultural backdrop to all this can genuinely help you feel more confident and just sound more natural when you're speaking English.
The goal, really, is to help you move past that feeling of awkwardness, to give you the understanding and maybe some tools so you feel more prepared, more comfortable starting these interactions. Because, as the material suggests, small talk isn't trivial. It's actually a pretty foundational skill for building connections and just navigating the social world in English.
Okay, let's dive right in then. Let's start at the absolute beginning, based on this material we've looked at. What is small talk? What are we actually talking about here?
Right. So, drawing from the material, small talk is defined first and foremost as light, casual conversation.
Light and casual. Okay.
Yeah, and it's explicitly contrasted with anything deep or serious. The focus is really on, everyday things, the low-stakes stuff.
So think surface level. Got it. We're not jumping straight into like our deepest life philosophies or hashing out complex problems 5 minutes after meeting someone.
Definitely not. Keep it light, keep it simple. But here's the key point the material makes. This isn't just random chatter. It actually serves some very specific purposes.
Okay, like what? What's the function?
Well, several key things are highlighted. First off, it helps people feel comfortable. In a shared space or situation. It's like a social lubricant, making things feel less stiff or formal.
That makes sense. It's like breaking the ice, isn't it? Kind of easing into an interaction instead of just jumping straight to the main point or whatever reason you're there.
Exactly. And it also plays a role in building connections. Now, these might be very brief connections, sometimes just fleeting, but it's about acknowledging the other person, establishing a sort of basic level of rapport. And maybe most obviously, it makes social situations feel less awkward. That silence we mentioned at the start.
Yeah.
Small talk is basically the accepted way to fill that void, to overcome that potential awkwardness. It's the go-to tool for breaking the silence, as the material puts it.
It's like the social version of clearing your throat before you start a speech, but you're doing it with the other person. The material actually gave a really good relatable example for this. Thinking about two strangers on an airplane.
Oh, right. Yes, that was a great illustration. The point was, these two people sitting side by side for maybe hours, they're not going to immediately start discussing their, deepest fears or their relationship problems.
God, no. That would be incredibly uncomfortable, wouldn't it, for everyone involved, especially since you've literally just met, or maybe haven't even spoken yet.
Exactly. So instead, the material points out one might say something super simple, like, wow, looks like we're going to have a smooth flight today. Or maybe, gosh, this flight seems really full. Or even just commenting on the view out the window if there is one.
Simple observations.
Totally simple. And that tiny comment wow, looks like we're going to have a smooth flight today. It does all that work we just talked about. It breaks the silence, but in a really non-threatening way. It acknowledges the shared context. You're both on the same plane, experiencing the same flight. And it kind of opens a little door, just a crack, for more interaction if either person wants to push it open. Or not. But even if it stops there, it makes the whole shared experience feel a bit more comfortable, less like you're just sitting next to a complete unknown for hours. It's that perfect low-risk entry point.
That example really does capture it. It's about finding a tiny piece of shared reality, a shared moment, and just acknowledging it gently.
Yeah.
Now, the material also puts quite a bit of emphasis on the cultural side of this, especially in English-speaking cultures. This seems like a really crucial point for anyone learning English.
It is, and the material really stresses this. It states pretty clearly that in many English-speaking cultures, the US, the UK, Canada, Australia are mentioned, small talk isn't just like an optional extra. It's often expected.
Expected, wow.
Yeah, it's like a standard part of how people interact in many situations, almost like a little ritual.
So if you don't do it, or
Right.
you try to bypass it,
hmm
that could actually be noticed, maybe even seen negatively.
Yes, the material suggests exactly that. It actually says that jumping straight into serious topics without any of that preliminary small talk can feel a bit weird or maybe overly formal.
Okay.
The example it uses is walking into a work meeting.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
I remember that. It contrasts just, bam, starting the agenda versus the expectation of some initial lighter chat first.
Precisely. The scenario is, imagine walking into a meeting room, maybe in New York or then according to this material, and your first words are, right, let's begin the quarterly report discussion, full stop, no preamble.
Yeah, okay, I can see how that might feel a bit jarring.
People might see you as abrupt, maybe a bit unfriendly, or just like so focused on the task that you seem cold. The material points out the absence of those expected little opening moments, someone saying, hey, how was your weekend? Or crazy weather out there, huh? Before diving into the business.
Okay, I get it now. So it's not just about being polite in a superficial way. It's about setting a particular kind of social tone. It signals that you see the people you're with as, well, more than just cogs in a machine to get a task done.
Exactly.
It's part of building and maintaining that rapport within the group, even a professional one, before you get into the main, maybe more intense subject matter.
Yes. It's about establishing that human connection first, however briefly. And this cultural expectation, this norm, is why the material argues so strongly that understanding and practicing small talk is really vital if you want to feel, comfortable and natural when you're interacting in these English-speaking environments. It's just a fundamental part of the social landscape there.
So the message for someone learning English who wants to feel more integrated, make smoother connections, is that small talk isn't just a nice to have. In many situations, it's more like a need to have. It's the oil in the social gears.
That's a great way to put it. Think of it like the conversational handshake. It signals friendliness, openness, and it makes the transition to maybe more serious conversation much smoother, if that's where things need to go. Without that initial handshake, things can feel stiff, maybe even a little awkward.
Right. Okay. So we've established what it is: light, casual chat. We know why it's important: comfort, connection, avoiding awkwardness. And we know it's often a cultural expectation. That gives us the framework. But then comes the really practical question, the one the material moves on to next. Okay, I get it, I need to do it, but what on earth do I actually talk about? What are the safe topics?
And this is where the material gets really helpful, providing a list of common small talk topics. It specifically describes them as things that work in almost any situation. So these are your reliable starting points, your go-to options.
The first one on the list, almost predictably, is the weather.
The absolute classic. The material even have a line like, I know it sounds basic, but trust me, it works. And it's true. It works because it's basic. Everyone experiences it no matter where they are or what they're doing. It's this universally shared thing, which makes it the lowest possible barrier to starting a conversation. You don't need to know anything about the other person. Just, look outside.
And it specifically mentions how popular it is in places like the US, the UK, Canada, Australia. But it really highlights the UK, saying talking about the weather there is practically a national hobby.
Yeah, that specific note about the UK is interesting, isn't it? It suggests that while weather is always available as a topic, it holds this particular, almost ingrained cultural weight in some places. It's more than just something to say. It's a deeply understood, super frequent social entry point there.
A code, almost.
Kind of. And the material gives simple, ready-to-use phrases, it's such a nice day today. Or the opposite, wow, it's freezing outside. These aren't, profound meteorological insights.
No.
They're just observations. They invite a simple agreement, maybe a brief shared groan about the cold or sigh of relief about the sun. You're just inviting the other person into that shared reality for a second.
Okay, so weather,
Hmm.
check. Simple, safe, culturally relevant. What's next on the list of reliable topics from the material?
Weekend plans. This is described as another inherently safe and easy topic.
Why safe and easy?
Well, most people have some kind of weekend or they anticipate one, and generally people feel okay talking about what they did in their free time or what they hope to do. It's usually linked to positive or at least neutral activities, relaxing, hobbies, seeing friends, family stuff.
And the example phrases are pretty straightforward too.
Yeah.
Asking, got any fun plans for the weekend? Or, on a Monday, how was your weekend?
Yeah.
Perfect, accessible questions.
Absolutely. They show a kind of friendly, casual interest in the other person's life, but without being nosy. You're asking about their leisure time, which is usually a pretty relaxed, non-controversial zone.
Right.
And it's open-ended. Someone can give a really short answer like, oh, nothing much, just relaxing. Or they could choose to share a bit more detail about a trip they took or a project they worked on. It gives them control over how much they share.
Okay, weather, weekend plans.
Hmm.
The third topic, the material flags as widely applicable, is travel.
Yes, and the source notes pretty accurately, I think, that everyone loves talking about travel, or at least most people do. It taps into aspirations, past experiences, dream destinations. It's usually quite fertile ground for positive conversation because travel often connects to excitement, discovery, good memories.
The suggested ways to start are questions like, have you been on any trips lately? Or maybe, what's your dream travel destination?
Yeah, those are great examples. They're open-ended, they invite more than just a yes-no answer. And crucially, the material slips in a really vital tip here for making small talk actually work, and that's using follow-up questions.
Ah, yes, so important.
If someone mentions, say, they went to Italy, you don't just say, oh, nice. You follow up, like the material suggests. Oh, that sounds amazing. What was your favorite part? Or maybe ask how long they were there, or if they'd recommend it.
That is so key. Small talk isn't supposed to be like an interrogation, just one question after another. It's an interaction. As the material implies, using those follow-up questions is how you actually keep the conversation going.
Exactly.
It shows you were actually listening, first of all, and that you have some genuine, even if just polite interest. It turns a simple statement of fact, I went to Italy, into a chance for them to share a little story or express some enthusiasm, and it keeps the conversational ball rolling.
Precisely. A good small talker isn't just someone who can ask the first question. It's someone who listens to the response and can pick up on a little thread to ask something else, keeping things flowing in that light, comfortable way. It builds momentum.
And the final topic recommended in the material as being in that safe and easy category, food.
Right. The material calls this one super easy because, well, fundamentally, everyone eats.
Can't argue with that.
It's another one of those universal human experiences. And it offers endless possibilities for casual conversation starters, talking about local restaurants, different types of cuisine, cooking, even just asking what someone had for lunch. It's all incredibly accessible territory.
The suggested phrases are nice and simple, too.
Mm-hmm.
Have you tried any good restaurants lately? Or do you like cooking?
Yeah, great entry points. Most people have an opinion about food, or a recent experience, right? Whether they're a gourmet chef, love trying new places, or just survive on takeout, they can probably respond to those questions. And like the material says, you can quickly have a conversation based on these simple prompts. It allows for sharing preferences. Oh, I love Thai food, or there's this great new cafe, without getting into anything too personal.
Okay, let's just quickly recap those safe zones the material identifies. We've got weather, weekend plans, travel, and food. You touched on why they're safe earlier, but let's just crystallize that again, based on the idea that small talk is about creating comfort.
Sure, so if the goal is comfort, breaking silence gently, building light connections, these topics are ideal because, firstly, they're generally neutral. They don't usually carry strong emotional charges or involve deeply held beliefs that might cause conflict, unlike, say, politics.
Low risk of arguments.
Exactly. Secondly, they're non-intrusive. You can talk about the rain or a pasta dish without revealing anything deeply personal or sensitive about yourself. Even discussing weekend plans or travel can be kept pretty general if you want.
You control the level of disclosure.
Precisely. And third, they're highly relatable. Almost everyone has some experience or opinion related to weather, weekends, travel, or food. This makes it easy for both people to join in and find some common ground, even if it's just for a moment. They are essentially low-stakes, high-availability topics designed for easy, positive interaction.
That nails it. They're the perfect on-ramp to conversation without the risk of immediately hitting a nerve or crossing a boundary. Okay, so we have our toolbox of go-to topics, but just as importantly, the material stresses understanding what topics to generally avoid.
Yes, this is the other side of the coin, and just as crucial for not messing up. Knowing what not to say is vital for preventing those cringeworthy moments or accidentally causing offense or discomfort, which, again, totally defeats the whole purpose of small talk.
Definitely want to avoid that. Okay, so what's first on the avoid list? The material explicitly flags politics.
Yeah, and the reason given is very direct. People have very strong opinions about it, and it can turn into a debate really quickly.
Simple as that. And it adds that little note that this is particularly true, especially in the U.S.
That specific mention is interesting. It suggests an awareness that while politics can be risky anywhere for small talk, the current climate in certain places, like the US, is often especially polarized and emotionally charged. So, since the whole point of small talk is comfort and connection, diving into a topic that's practically designed for disagreement, strong emotions, and quick escalation, well, it's almost guaranteed to backfire. Unless you know the person really well, know where they stand, and you're both kind of implicitly agreeing to have a deeper, potentially more challenging chat. Politics is just off the table for small talk. It's the opposite of light and easy.
Makes sense. You're aiming for rapport, not a sparring match. Okay, what's the next topic the material warns us away from?
Money. The material is clear on why this is tricky, asking very direct questions like, so how much do you make? Or even, wow, nice car, how much did that cost? These can make people feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it points out that in many cultures, definitely including most English-speaking ones, talking about personal finances with someone you don't know well is often seen as, well, pretty rude.
It hits on a strong cultural norm around privacy. Your financial situation, your income, how much you paid for things, these are generally considered private matters. Bringing them up in a casual, small talk setting feels intrusive, can sound judgmental, or just plain nosy. Small talk relies on respecting personal boundaries and comfort zones, and money questions usually cross that line.
Okay, so politics and money are definite no-goes for light chat. The third category the material advises caution with is overly personal topics.
Yes, and it gives specific examples like asking someone's age, their weight, or their relationship status. These things, it notes, can be a bit awkward.
Why awkward?
Well, because they're digging into deeply personal attributes or life circumstances that someone might just not want to share with a relative stranger. People can be sensitive about their age or weight for all sorts of reasons, and relationship status, that can be complicated, sometimes even painful for people. It's just not light, surface-level stuff.
This is where the material offers that really useful, practical alternative. Remember, instead of a blunt question like, are you married? Which demands a specific personal status update.
Right. It suggests shifting to something much safer, more general and activity-based, like, do you have any plans for the holidays?
That comparison is so helpful because it shows the difference perfectly. Are you married? Is asking for a specific personal fact. Got plans for the holidays? Is about activities, shared cultural events like holidays, things people do rather than are. Someone can talk about holiday plans without revealing anything sensitive about their relationship status if they don't want to.
Exactly. It keeps it friendly and conversational, but respects that personal boundary. That technique, focusing on shared experiences or external events rather than potentially sensitive internal states or personal facts, is a really key strategy for navigating small talk well.
That's a brilliant, actionable tip. And the final category on the avoid list from the material.
Negative topics. The material is pretty firm here, starting a conversation by complaining. Launching in with, ugh, I hate my job, or this city is just terrible, isn't it? That immediately sets a negative tone.
Which, as the material points out, goes directly against the whole spirit of small talk, which should be light and positive. The advice is simple. Try to keep things upbeat.
Yeah, opening with negativity can really put the other person on the spot. Do they agree with your complaint? Do they try to cheer you up? Do they awkwardly try to change the subject? It can feel like you're unloading an emotional burden onto a very casual interaction. Small talk is meant to be a brief, hopefully pleasant moment of connection, not really a therapy session or a place to vent frustrations. Keeping it generally positive or neutral just makes it more welcoming and comfortable for everyone.
Okay, so let's quickly summarize the danger zones based on the material. Steer clear of politics, too divisive; money, too private or rude; Overly personal questions like age, weight, relationship status too intrusive, and generally negative topics or complaints kills the positive vibe. All of these essentially introduce conflict, intrusion, or negativity.
Exactly. All things that are fundamentally incompatible with the low-stakes, comfortable, positive space that small talk is supposed to create.
Got it. So we have the what, the why, the good topics, the bad topics, but the material adds another really important layer, which makes the picture much richer. Understanding the cultural nuances and seeing how this plays out in the real world. It rightly notes that small talk isn't just what you say, but also how and where you say it. And it acknowledges that its role can even vary a bit between different English-speaking countries.
This cultural context piece is where it all becomes really practical, I think. The material emphasizes that knowing these nuances helps you feel more confident and natural. Because what feels like a totally normal small talk moment in one place might happen differently or be less common somewhere else, even if they all speak English.
The material gives some specific examples of where small talk is commonly expected in English-speaking cultures. One big one is the workplace.
Yes, it highlights that small talk is expected in many situations in English-speaking workplaces, particularly in those moments before a formal meeting actually kicks off, or just, in the break room or passing someone in the hallway.
And it mentions the common topics cropping up there too. Weekend chat, the weather again, maybe sports, if that's a known shared interest.
Right, it grounds those safe topics we discussed in a specific professional context. And that point the material made earlier about skipping this initial chat in a US or UK workplace and just diving straight into the agenda.
Yeah, I said doing that might make you seem a bit too serious or even unfriendly.
Which ties back perfectly to the purpose of small talk in these settings. It's not seen as wasting time. It's part of relationship maintenance. It's acknowledging your colleagues as people, building or sustaining that friendly rapport before you get into the potentially more stressful or formal work stuff. If you bypass it, it can come across as prioritizing the task so heavily that you ignore the human element, which can feel cold or purely transactional in cultures that value this kind of social interaction. It suggests you're only there for the function, not the relationship.
Okay, so workplace is one key area, but the material also shows small talk woven into just everyday life, like in a coffee shop.
Yeah, that's a super common scenario. The material uses the example of chatting briefly with the barista. They might ask, "How's your day going?" while they're making your drink.
And the sample response given is something like, pretty good, just grabbing some coffee before work. How about you?
Yeah, and that tiny exchange, the material points out, is a perfect little snapshot of small talk embedded within a transaction. Your main purpose is coffee. Theirs is serving you. But that little bit of chat elevates it slightly.
Humanizes it.
Exactly. It acknowledges the other person's existence beyond their role, creates a brief, positive micro moment in a public space, and just makes the whole experience feel a bit nicer than a completely silent functional exchange.
It's those little moments sprinkled through the day. The material also mentions small talk popping up on public transport.
Right. Like if you're waiting for a bus or maybe sitting on a train, the material says you might hear people making comments or you might make one yourself. Something like, "Wow, busy morning today, huh?" If it's really crowded.
Or inevitably, the weather's been crazy this week. It's something unusual is happening.
Always back to the weather. But again, there's simple observations about a shared immediate reality. Everyone waiting for that bus is experiencing the wait. Everyone on the crowded train is experiencing the crowd. And the material makes a really interesting point here. Small comments like these help people feel more connected, even with strangers.
That's quite powerful, isn't it? From such simple comments.
It is. It suggests small talk isn't just for people you know or want to know better. It's also a mechanism for feeling a sense of shared community, however temporary, in public. It lessens that feeling of total anonymity, of being isolated in a crowd, just by acknowledging a shared experience with the people physically around you. It's that social glue idea, again, working even between strangers.
That idea of feeling connected even with strangers is quite profound, actually, stemming from just commenting on the bus being late. And the material then circles back specifically to the British weather example, really emphasizing it.
It does. It kind of doubles down on the cultural significance of weather talk in Britain, calling it an easy, neutral topic that can work in almost any situation there.
And giving those classic phrases again, lovely day today, isn't it? Or the slightly more gloomy but equally common, looks like it's going to rain again.
These examples, especially paired with that earlier comment about it being a national hobby, really drive home how a seemingly trivial topic can become this deeply ingrained cultural habit for initiating contact, for bridging silence. It acts like a reliable, universally understood social code in that specific cultural context. It also nicely illustrates that even within the big umbrella of English-speaking cultures, you can find these interesting variations in which topics are most prominent or how they function socially.
These cultural examples really nail the point that small talk isn't just about vocabulary or grammar. It's a whole cultural layer wrapped around the language. It's part of the social operating system in these places. And the material wraps up this section with a really key takeaway for you, the listener. Practicing small talk is essential if you want to sound natural.
Yes, and it specifically addresses listeners who might come from cultures where chatting with strangers just isn't the norm. The material clarifies. In English-speaking countries, small talk is a normal and expected part of daily conversation.
That feels like such a crucial message to absorb. It might feel unnatural, maybe even pointless or uncomfortable, if your own culture handles initial interactions differently. But the material is telling us pretty directly that if your goal is to participate naturally and feel comfortable in many English-speaking settings, you kind of need to embrace small talk as just normal, a standard part of communicating.
It might require a bit of a cultural adjustment, definitely. Recognizing that these brief, sometimes seemingly surface-level exchanges aren't just acceptable, they're often actively valued. Because they smooth things over, they help people feel more connected, more at ease when they're sharing space.
Okay, so this deep dive, using all the insights in the material we've covered, has taken us through quite a journey. We've defined small talk, understood its purpose and cultural weight, identified the safe topics, flagged the ones to avoid, all backed up by examples. We've seen how it works in real life, from the office to the coffee queue, and even noted cultural variations like the British focus on weather.
It's definitely more complex than just making conversation, isn't it? It's a specific type of conversation with its own kind of rules and functions within certain cultures.
And the great thing is, the material doesn't just leave us with the theory. It actually offers a practical way for you, the listener, to start putting this into action.
Yeah, it lays out a really simple three-step challenge. It's designed to get you practicing right away.
Okay, step one, go out and actually start a small talk conversation in English. Find an opportunity waiting somewhere, before class, whatever, and take the initiative.
Step two, when the other person replies, listen. And then try to ask a follow-up question based on what they said. Just something simple to keep it going for another exchange or two.
And step three, while you're doing this, consciously try to use at least one of the types of phrases or topics we discussed today. Maybe make a comment about the weather, ask about their weekend, mention food or travel. Just pick one that feels relatively comfortable to start with.
This challenge is fantastic because it bridges the gap between just knowing about small talk and actually doing it. And that practice is really the only way to build confidence and make this skill feel more natural over time. Start small, observe how others do it, and just give it a try.
It turns all the information from this deep dive into something tangible, a tool you can actually use in your own life. And mastering small talk, as this material really underscores, is a pretty fundamental skill if you're interacting regularly in English-speaking places.
It really is. It's key for making those initial connections, for navigating social situations with less friction, and honestly, just for feeling more comfortable and integrated when you're using English day to day in many parts of the world. It really is the lubricant for everyday social life.
It fills those potentially awkward gaps and just opens the door, even just a little bit, to a positive human interaction. So maybe reflect on what we've explored today using this material as our guide. We touched on how small talk isn't even identical everywhere English is spoken. Remember that specific emphasis on weather in the UK versus more general expectations elsewhere.
Yeah, the material definitely hinted at those subtle variations in how and where small talk happens culturally.
Which leads to a final interesting thought for you to maybe mull over. How might those subtle differences in small talk habits, even between, say, the US and the UK, actually reflect deeper cultural values or communication styles in those places? What might the focus on weather in Britain say about British culture, maybe compared to other common topics elsewhere?
That's a fascinating question.
Or, taking it even broader, how does learning about these specific expectations around English small talk make you view conversations in your own native language or culture differently? Are there similar unspoken rules, preferred safe topics, or maybe totally different ways of starting interactions?
Thinking about those comparisons can really help put the specifics of English small talk into a wider context. Makes you more aware of conversational dynamics everywhere, really.
Exactly. So take the insights from this deep dive into the material on small talk, maybe give that little practice challenge a shot, and just keep observing and participating in the conversations happening around you. The more you practice this skill, the more it's likely to feel like a natural, comfortable part of how you communicate in English.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep connecting.